Welcome aboard the Pilot Money Guys podcast, where our mission is to help professional pilots build and protect wealth on their journey to financial freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Leading Edge Financial Planning.
All right, welcome to the Pilot Money Guys. We're back for a new year, new content, 2025. It's a great new year so far. What could go wrong now, right? We've got the team today. We've got Lisa Rosenthal with us today, Jon Schultz, Nolan Clark, all members of the Leading Edge team. And this is Jon Schultz's first podcast with us. Nolan, you're a crusty veteran before. Okay, you've done these before, right? But Jon is joining the team, and we've got him on his first podcast. He's got a lot of awesome inputs for us. But first, before we jump into our content today, we are excited about what's coming up this year and all the things that we have planned for the podcast. But we would love for you to pick up your phone, give us a rating, do that through wherever you get your podcast. You can check that out for us. We'd really appreciate that. It helps us to reach more pilots and get the message out so we can help more people. So we appreciate that. And also, don't forget to take the Pilot Wealth Index. If you're listening to the podcast, pick up your phone, go to the podcast page, and you can click on the link there to check it out. You'll get a score that kind of shows you, are you on track? Are you doing the right things to be prepared for a good retirement? So check it out, see what your score is, and then let us know if we can be of any service at all. So again, we appreciate you listening and sharing the message as well. So welcome again, Lisa, Jon, and Nolan. We're glad you're here today. You're going to help us talk about our topic of how to help our young pilots lay a outstanding framework foundation for financial success. So welcome, Lisa. Let's start with you. What is your New Year's resolution? On the spot.
Oh, throw me under the bus with the opener.
That's right.
My New Year's resolution is to do meal planning this year.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah. To be more economical and intentional with my shopping and cooking. Because my confession is I completely stopped cooking a few years ago. So I have no idea what my children eat to get themselves through the day. But this is the year that we're going to get back on track.
That's good. Now, are you trying to be more healthy? What's the overall thing there? What's your why behind this New Year's resolution?
To be more healthy. Yep, for sure. To be more healthy. I'm noticing that my diet is not particularly colorful. It's protein packed, but it's not colorful. And my kids are teenagers. So I want to be sure to launch them with a better skill set on how to feed themselves, how to shop economically, how to just manage this kind of necessary evil of food preparation and eating that we have to do every single darn day. So,
yeah. Nutrition is hard. Nutrition is hard. But the good news is, Lisa, as Nolan reminded me today, you got 3 more days till Quitter's Day, which is this Friday the 10th, and you're good. You're good. You don't have to.
You got this, Lisa.
You got it. 3 more days.
I haven't started yet.
All right. Well, heck, you're already on the right track.
I bought some cookbooks though, so they're ready and waiting. The motivation hasn't dropped off yet.
Oh, that's good.
Effort hasn't kicked in.
Well, for those that don't know, the 10th, the second Friday in January is officially called Quitter's Day. That's about how long all the New Year's resolutions make it. So if you make it past January 10th, this Friday, and in fact, the podcast won't even come out until after that. But nonetheless, if you're hearing this podcast and are still doing your New Year's resolutions, then you've bested 90% of the population, right? So awesome.
I would jump in to add, if you are not, it's okay, right? Yeah, it's okay. Right. New Year's resolutions, they can be February 1st resolutions. They can be June 15th resolutions.
Every day is a new day. Start over.
Stick at it. Stick with it. Yeah.
Nolan, what's yours?
Well, I'm glad Lisa said that. That gave me an excuse because, with Claire and I just having our first little one, it's like everything's been thrown out of whack. Our habits. When the team meeting the other day, we were talking about our, some of our New Year's resolutions. It kind of got me thinking. After work, I talked to Claire. I was like, we gotta get a few of these together as a couple personally. So we talked about a few. We're gonna every day go on a walk together as a couple. That's really good time for us to get him out of the house. And then for me personally, read a book every month. I read a lot of articles, but I think for me, books just, I don't know, being able to underline something, things resonate a little better. So it'll be just kind of a mix between, personal, so obviously some financial, books thrown in there. I know we've done book study as a team. So, but yeah, still working on some of the New Year's resolutions.
Oh, that's good. I'll share that one with you. I'm reading a book a month at least, and the Bible in 1 year, which is a big book.
That's ambitious.
That's hard to do. So, but John, what about you? What are your New Year's resolutions?
Well,
have you quit yet?
I haven't started yet, but the goal was to start going to the gym again.
There you go.
Haven't started yet. Maybe that'll turn into a February 1st resolution.
Yep.
But,
that's perfect because the gyms are
healthy.
always crowded the first few weeks of January, right? Then everybody got through the Quitters Friday, and then you move in, and the gym is all to yourself.
It's all yours.
Exactly. Perfect.
Absolutely. So how do we make it past Quitters Day, and like I said, outpace and beat the other 90% of the folks that are going to quit possibly on the 10th of January. I looked at an article and a couple of things popped out, and basically everybody's probably heard of the SMART goals setting, right? I mean, it's specific. In fact, the acronym goes like this: specific targets, measurable, track your progress, attainable. You want it to be a stretch goal, but not something impossible or something that probably isn't realistic. So relevant, what's the purpose of your goal? And that's why Lisa talked about, hey, why are you doing this? We got to have a pretty solid why. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. We know that. And then timely, you got to have a date kind of time tied to this goal and measure the progress, reevaluate your progress as you go on. So that's kind of how you set those goals. But for me, I like to kind of set what I call input goals or habits, maybe. Like instead of I want to go to the gym and, lift 500 pounds, I don't do that. I'm never going to do that. But nonetheless, I can show up maybe 4 times a week. And when I show up, there is a specific, a workout that will be scheduled. So I know that it's a win for me if I can just get that consistency and show up. So that's kind of like a habit, of a goal that I like to be able to do. And like Nolan said, 1 book a month. That's very specific, very measurable. But then the next step is to break it up into a daily habit. What is it? 1 chapter a day or a certain amount a day, depending on the book you're reading, and just kind of stick with that. So those are a couple of things that can help. But I think the most important one is why you're doing it. You know what I mean? And like Lisa, like you said, I want to eat healthier. You know what I mean? And that probably would lead to feeling better, or at least psychologically feeling better that you've accomplished something and you're eating healthier. So that's going to have all kinds of other benefits as well.
I think it's important to really take a look at what's the realistic part. Like, is it really attainable as well? Yeah. A few years ago, I decided to get back to the gym, and I had a good why. I was starting to be hesitant about riding my mountain bike through ditches and jumping off things with my kids. And I thought, I'm too young to be hesitant. And I went to the gym and they said, how many days a week can you come? 3, 4? And I said, 2. And inside it killed me a little bit. My pride took a hit because I'm like, 2, that doesn't sound like anything significant, but I knew that was realistically all I could get in there. But 2 gave me this sense of accomplishment. And before I knew it, 2 was 3, and then 3 was 4. And over time, that habit built. But I think if I had set that goal really lofty from the beginning, I would have felt defeated before I was even out of the gate. Yeah. So for me, that element of the SMART planning is really important. Give yourself some grace that it's okay to maybe start smaller than where you'd like to be.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And a couple of the other things that the article talked about, staying motivated throughout the year. One of them is visualizing your success. I mean, these are a little cheesy and hard to do. In fact, I'm going to give a shout out to my sister-in-law, Amanda Mattingly. She actually teaches a visualization, like these vision boards. And she has these classes where they come in and they do vision boards. And again, a lot of us, I'll say you, John, you pilots, and I used to be one, but nonetheless, you get this like, that's stupid, I'm not doing that. But it's proven to be effective. And sometimes things that we know, like taking a walk with your wife in the morning, Nolan, every day, that's going to help your health. It's going to help your relationship. Some of these things we know will be effective, but I don't know what it is. Maybe a little bit of pride, maybe a little ego says, I'm not doing that. That's dumb. I'm not making a vision board. I'm not cutting pictures out of a magazine, but it's proven. In fact, I was listening to my man, Ed Milet, the other day. I love his podcast. He said, science proves, we don't know how, but anyway, if you physically write something down, not type it on your computer, type it in your phone, write it down, the impact is huge on achieving those goals. And so it's pretty incredible. So that's it. Visualize that success, however you choose to do that. If you write stuff down, review it. And then I love this one, find support. You either, Lisa, I love what you did. You found a coach, and sometimes it can be a friend that meets you at the gym. And by the way, these can be anything, money goals, family goals. But it seems like the physical goal is the easiest one to use as an analogy or as an example. But at my stage of life, I'm not sure it's even possible to really make significant progress, and I'm speaking specifically about the gym, without accountability. It just becomes so hard with family, with life, with consistency. I've got a couple guys that will text me and go, where are you at, dude? Or if I see them signed up for that particular class, I'm like, well, if Jeff can do it, I can do it. And then here we go. I'm up at 5 a.m. doing it. So anyway.
I remember saying to the gym when they took me on the tour and they said, what's the number one thing you need to be successful here? And I flat out said, a babysitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I know me at this stage in my life, I know I need that. So I pay somebody to hold me accountable, but it's proven to be worth every penny.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It keeps your enthusiasm going.
Yeah. Nolan, what you got?
Yeah, I was going to mention one of the books I'm reading right now. It's called Resisting Happiness. It's by an author named Matthew Kelly, but he talks about how sometimes putting a name to that's kind of like what we're talking about, that resistance. Like Charlie, I'm sure, and Lisa, like every time you think of maybe if you work out in the morning, it's like, I'm sure every day it's a battle to go still, even though you've made it a habit. And it's just that resistance every day. And that's like so many things in life, but sometimes just putting a name to it can really help. Like you're almost like you're in a battle with resistance and a lot of things in life.
Absolutely. I love, this idea. And again, our audience are airline pilots, professional pilots, corporate fractional pilots that make a good living. So I'm just going to throw this out there. Of all the things you spend your money on, spend it on an accountability coach or meal planning. These things that we kind of, quite frankly, don't want to spend our money on, but yet we'll go spend $500 a month on booze, quite frankly, right? It's like, man, these things have lifelong impacts. So don't be a cheap pilot. Go out and get yourself a coach if you don't have one already for fitness, or get your meal plans, whatever you need to do. Spend the money and it'll be well worth it. Again, you can start new goals anytime. It's the beginning of the year. It's fun to talk about, fun to make fun of each other and see when we all quit our goals. And nobody on here is going to do that. But nonetheless, you can start over anytime, right? It doesn't have to be the new year.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's see. The meat of the mission today. The top things our young pilots can do to be successful right now with their money and in the eventual retirement, whatever that looks like. And at this point in time, retirement is age 65 for most airlines. Now, the fractional carriers and some corporate, John, you know this better than I do. You came from FlexJet. You can fly. What's the age at these fractional carriers?
I think we had a guy in his 80s at FlexJet, if I recall right.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had a lot of guys from the airlines come on over, and that was what they wanted to do for retirement, is come fly planes still.
Yeah, we've got a couple of those that are, I say, hey, you don't have to do this. You're doing fine. And they're like, I can't play golf 7 days a week, so I'm going to go fly. But we want to set up what's fascinating from our perspective. This is the reason we're having this podcast. We get to work with people that are in retirement from the airlines, that are nearing retirement. And as of late, I'd say the last year or so, we've got airline pilot clients age 23 And some of them are in the left seat in their late 20s at United, Delta, wherever. And that is phenomenal. It's like, wow, what an awesome opportunity to help these young pilots lay the foundation. And I always tell them, like, and you all know this example because you have aviation backgrounds, but you're taking off out of LA, you turn 1 degree off course, and by the time you get to Chicago, it's hundreds of miles, right? So that just analogy is like, we make one little change right now in the right direction, not the wrong direction, but in the right direction, massive impacts later down the road. So it's always so exciting for us to be a part of that when we get to talk and communicate and help our young airline professional pilots. So that's why we're doing this. Second thing that I wanted to share, and we saw this article in Flying Magazine, and it talked about pilots are getting paid more now than ever. It seems like every airline, pretty much every fractional carrier, including NetJets, I think has gone through some recent pay increases and new contracts. FlyingMagazine.com talked about this new paradigm of the ability for airline pilots to make more money than a lot of other professions. And so this article, we'll put a link to it in the show notes, but it says pilot career earnings top $13 million, according to this particular flight school in this article. And so basically the highlight there is, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median annual wage for airline pilots is around $202,000. Medical doctors came in with a salary of $208,000, lawyers about $128,000, and engineers, which again I found a little bit hard to believe is so low, a median annual wage of $79,000, almost $80,000, which to me, again, an engineer, that's a tough profession. But the point is, airline pilots have a humongous earning opportunity for their lifetime, and man, we hope that they take the time to be intentional, to not squander. And that's what we're hearing from a lot of people that come to us. Hey, I don't want to mess this up. This is an opportunity that we got to get right. So that's exciting when they're thinking that way. So what we've got today is we're going to have the top 10, and we broke these up into 2 categories. And we did that intentionally. The first category, the most important, I think, is the mindset. We always talk about these different strategies or techniques, or how much am I saving, or whatever, but all of those things depend on your mindset. And it's kind of like the goal setting, right? Why are we doing this stuff? And a lot of that overlaps into the financial, but the mindset's super important. Then the second category here that we'll go into are going to be the habits and or strategies, however we want to categorize them, but the hard hitting things that we can do. So I'll start us off. Number one on the mindset for me is that life happens, and be ready. I was talking to a young guy just today, Tyler, young guy out of Charlotte. He was a New Southwest guy, and he was, you could tell he was thinking of the right things. And we all know of airline pilots that have been furloughed and worked for 4 and 5 and 6 airlines over their career, and it's really hard to keep starting over, right? And so he knew that although things are great right now, the airline business is a little crazy. We all know that. And so we got to be ready for it. Not only that, the professional risk, but there's the personal risk where, hey, you show up for your EKG or your annual physical and you're done. That's a possibility that every pilot faces every time they go. And so, John, I'll hand it off to you because you've got some experience in that category, and you've been living through that. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was captain at FlexJet on the Phenom, living my best life, eating real well, and loving being a pilot, traveling all around. And then one day in February, next day, I haven't flown since. I got sick, had some medical issues. Yeah, next thing I know, I can't fly anymore. Mm-hmm. So, overnight, like, it can happen. I mean, I'm in my late 20s. Like, this is not something I was going to worry about, now to like 40s, 50s, 60s. I'm like, I'm young, I'm healthy. I haven't needed to go to the doctor or anything. I shouldn't have to worry about that. That hazardous attitude of it won't happen to me, when it's important to realize, it can happen to you. Mm-hmm. it doesn't even have to be medical risk too. There's other factors like aviation is somewhat dangerous. You get emails, oh, hey, your flight instructor crashed last night. So it's important to have, plans set up. If you have a family, they're going to need to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to think about like, hey, this can happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I like the way you called it the hazardous attitude, because I think it's almost impossible for us. I'll say us, but I'm not a young pilot anymore. But as a young pilot, I don't think it's possible to go, hey, realistically, hey, this could happen to me. I mean, I just think, we're almost wired to not think that way. And I think that's where that accountability partner comes into play, just like working out, where, Jon, that's why you got into this business partly, this financial business is so that you could go spread that message and show people, and with your testimony, like, hey, this can happen, and here's how we can prepare just in case it does. But yeah, that's a powerful testimony. I know that there's a lot of emotion that you're going through, that you've been involved in, and that's very difficult, and you're making the best of a tough situation. But it's awesome that you've chosen to go and, to help other people with what you've gone through. So that's hats off to you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be able to help out pilots who, may go through my situation or, something similar.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's always a lot to plan for and be prepared for.
Absolutely. Luckily, a lot of good benefits too, to help people if they're going through that. But Nolan, what about you on the mindset side of the house? What's one that resonates with you?
I'll go with number 6, probably the don't try to get rich quick.
Yeah.
They're especially nowadays, I think with, I sound like an old guy, even though I'm a young guy, but all these, things on the internet, social media, it seems like everywhere you look, the most popular thing, of course, is how to get rich quick. And, most of the time, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. And kind of the things that do make sense are the ones that aren't as appealing, but, saving for the long term. And just like Jon was talking about, these hazardous habits of no one really wants to think about 50 years down the road. That's not really fun. A lot of people don't think of that. And it's kind of, it's unique in any industry. You need to be saving for retirement, but especially the airline industry, especially for me, not being in this industry and this being, leading edge being my main exposure to it. It is so unique. If Charlie and I had a injury or something, we would most likely be able to continue sitting here at this desk and doing what we're doing. But that's not the case for airline pilots. And so it all goes together of preparing for the future. And to do that, you really have to start small and just start now, because that's the most important thing in letting compounding do its work, the eighth wonder of the world. But that would be mine, is just don't try to get rich quick.
That's a good one, Nolan, because I think when you're, when you're successful, when you're smart, like our audience is, you are most susceptible to some of the financial schemes that are out there. In fact, they prey on the really smart people, because smart people think and are able to solve problems and think this is also an area where I can figure out this, and someone else can't. And that can be true with flying an airplane. A lot of times, or whatever job or career it might be, there is an advantage to being creative, to being smart, being ambitious. But in the world of building wealth, it can be the opposite, where people prey on that attitude and they will, try to suck you in to the schemes, and you kind of fall prey to that because you have this desire to solve this unsolvable puzzle that nobody else has been able to do so far. And that's been shown where, hey, the people that are, victims of fraud, to use an extreme, are usually very smart, intelligent people. So that's one thing to be cautious of, I think.
That's a great point, Charlie. And to pile on to that, you just mentioned earlier, pilots now, young airline pilots have the potential to make near as much as a doctor, maybe even more over their career earnings. And so if you think about it, the money is there, the benefits are there. It's just, if you can do these little habits over a long period of time, you're going to be where you want to be, most likely, because it's, the resources are there for you.
Yep. There was I can't remember what book it was in, maybe Atomic Habits, Psychology of Money. We read that together as a firm, didn't we? Psychology of Money, great book. And he talked about Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger. And I didn't know this until reading, but there weren't just those two in the beginning. There were actually three. That were, I guess, starting the business or running the business together. But I remember in that book, they quoted Warren Buffett as saying, hey, whatever this third guy's name is, Bill, I can't remember. But, Bill just had this desire to get rich immediately. He didn't believe that we were eventually going to get rich. He just didn't have that faith. He wasn't comfortable in that idea that, yeah, we're going to get rich. It's going to happen. So he tried too hard to make things happen. He had an attitude of scarcity versus an attitude of abundance. And quite frankly, they said that got him in trouble. He ran into trouble along the way and was not part of, obviously, the long-term wealth that Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett were able to build. And so that's kind of, stuck with me, that example, because I had no idea that was the case, but pretty fascinating. So,
if he's hanging out with Buffett and Munger starting a business, he's a smart guy. So I think any of us are susceptible to it.
Yeah, sure. It is tough. But Lisa, what do you got?
I think along those lines, I think I would suggest as well that as with our clients, with the people we work with, they're very intelligent, highly successful. And the fact that successful investing is so simple, I think that goes in conflict with these are really smart people. And they probably expect this should have more complexity than it does. And just investing a steady amount over and over and over again will have typically eventually lead to a great payoff. But it's a simple model. But as successful, high achieving people, you live in a space of more complexity. And I think I've seen that. It's like, this can't possibly be the answer. It has to be harder than this. And that may also allude to why you succumb to some of these more schemes.
You nailed it. Yeah. People look for and feel like it has to be complex. We psychologically search that out because it makes us feel better that we're doing something very complex. And so it is hard sometimes to accept the fact that it's just disciplined behavior for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's again, it's really hard sometimes to comprehend and execute, I guess, is really the more difficult thing. But the other one that we see a lot that resonates with me is that, and I wrote this sentence down this way: you don't make that much. Now, airline pilots make a lot. It's a great income. But sometimes what I've seen, and I felt it too before, and I know some of the other pilots do, and that is, hey, I'm at this age or whatever, especially if I'm a young pilot, late 20s, and they're making a couple $100,000 a year. It's pretty incredible. And so you get this feeling of, well, I'm young, I'm making way more than all my peers, and not in this, career field. So I can do whatever I want. I can buy whatever car I want. I can buy whatever house I want, and I can eat out whenever I want. And that is never, ever true. And I remember my wife and I were talking years ago, and of course I was talking about spending, probably a budget of some sort. And she said, will there ever be a time when we don't have to do this? Because it was painful, right? I probably made it more painful than it had to be. And I said, no, there will never be a time. There will never be a time. And that was disappointing to her, I know. But you don't have to budget. I'm not talking about that. But the point is, it goes quick. We've seen people, families, both a husband, wife, airline, a high paying captain, and the money will go. It'll go quick. But Jon, you had a good discussion about this early before. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So we make really good money, and it's super easy to think about that. But it's interesting is flying for the fractionals, flying people around who spend millions on their private jet, every year. So you're never making private jet money. So you really don't make that much. I mean, when you can drop a couple million, on a private jet every year, then you're making that much money where, maybe it doesn't matter if you eat out every night and stuff. But, at that point, you're making so much money, it just doesn't matter. You can drop a couple million. I was super susceptible to this. I was like, oh, I'm making this much money now. I know my raise is next year. I'm getting like 40 or 50 grand more next year. Okay, yeah, I'll make it up then. And I let my spending habits and lifestyle creep come in, and it drastically reduced, how much I had put away. And, I could be in a way better financial situation if I would have saved more.
Yeah. No, that's good. You're right. It's all relative, isn't it? And it's great income, but it can get away from you no matter how much you fly. And so always have to be on guard for that. I love the mindset stuff because it's so impactful. That's really where we see in our practical experience, that's where we see the successful people. Like when they get to their mid 50s, 60s, and they're ready to retire, they've won the game. We tell them, hey, you've won the game. You know what I mean? And it really is almost always about their particular mindset and how they spend money, or how they spend, save, invest, etc.
I think perspective is key.
Yeah.
I mean, these young professionals are incredibly successful and they are making really good money, but just as we said, it's not that much, right? So I think it is, and that's something that will adjust and reset throughout the rest of your life, throughout the rest of all of our lives. So recognize this incredible abundance that you've got, but also recognize that could be more, right? But just keeping that perspective. There's people with more, there's people with less, and finding the balance between the two as you're navigating your own journey.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But one of the lessons I learned on that, Lisa, from our clients is as they gain wealth and build wealth, and not all, we do have some non-pilot clients, but sometimes we see people that are extremely wealthy, and you wonder, and our pilots have to face this too, you wonder how they navigate the challenge of passing on that wealth. And I don't just mean, how am I going to physically pass on this money and tax implications? I mean, how are my kids going to handle this? That's a legacy. And one of the things I've seen, the way some of these folks raise their children is by the perspective. They travel, they go to countries that are very, they go on mission trips, let's say. They see a lot of things all over the world where their perspective changes as a young child, and they realize, that they are blessed, and I think it helps them to handle the pressure of inheriting a significant amount of money. I think that's one of the successful things I've seen some of our clients do when it comes to building that family legacy, because we know most multimillionaire families, their money is gone within 3 generations. So passing down and building a family legacy of wealth is really, really challenging. So anyway, that's been interesting to see that and learn that. But as far as habits and strategies are concerned, I'm going to start off with my favorite, and that is the holy grail of savings, which is the Roth IRA or Roth 401k. And sometimes people don't even know that we have a Roth 401k. And I'll go on to say that sometimes people don't know that they can always contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert to a Roth IRA. Anybody of any income can do what I just said. Now, there are tax implications that you need to know about. We're not going to cover those here. It's beyond the scope of this discussion. But that is, sometimes people don't know that. The other one I'll throw in there is that I think almost every airline has the ability, if you're a young, new airline pilot, you'll probably always make more money than you're making right now, even in retirement. You do also have the ability to convert your 401k company contributions into Roth if you want to. Again, a lot of tax implications there, may or may not work for your particular circumstances, but that is an option, I believe, at every single airline. Now, the last thing I'll say on the Roth thing, there's all kinds of techniques and strategies, again, beyond the scope of this one. We've got other podcasts that cover them. But like Lisa is a good example on this podcast where we're using her in our pre-show prep, that the best advice you got, Lisa, and I'll let you tell the story in a minute, was when you were young, starting out, you're like, hey, what do I do? And you happen to be talking to the right person. And they said, save as much as you can in the Roth. And now, as a young 30 something, I know you're 30. Anyway, you have a lot. The vast majority, I think, is, or at least maybe the majority, is Roth. And so when we look at, you as an example and some of our other clients, there is a really good chance that when you get to 60, 65, 70, through a little bit of conversions, when your lower income years, maybe after retirement, or maybe a little bit of Roth contributions along the way, not necessarily 100% of your 401k, but nonetheless, there's a really good chance when you get into retirement, the overwhelming majority of your assets, investment assets, will be tax-free. That is absolutely incredible. And so our young FOs, young airline pilots, they have an opportunity to start building that foundation right now. Again, multitude of strategies, techniques at different airlines. We can help with that. But that is, to me, phenomenal opportunity that I think is just going to, can you imagine getting to 65, 70 and you're like, hey, I don't, there's a chance that I don't have to pay taxes on a lot of these investments. That's incredible. So Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah, I can remember it. I wish I could remember who the speaker was. It was in business school. And if this gives you any clue as to the time frame, one of our speakers that came in was an early executive for a company named Google that nobody really knew about yet. They had just...
So you're not 30. I said you were 30-ish, maybe.
We'll go with me being 30. I love that. But yeah, no, college was about that long ago. So I remember this was a long time ago, and it was a speaker that had come into the business school students, and he was a young person, and the kids were asking him, career advice. And this guy had said it was like a survey class of 500 students. And he said, if you're eligible to invest in a Roth, invest in a Roth. And that was about the extent of his advice. And I remember at the time, I really didn't understand what that meant, but I knew that I was eligible to do it. So, my husband and I at the time couldn't afford more than literally about $5 a month. So we each we opened what was it? It was the Vanguard, the hot Vanguard investment from the 90s. We put that in, we opened a Roth and whatever that Vanguard was, and we just each did $5 a month at $5 a month. And then over the years, it turned to 10 and 20 and 30. And now 30 years later, I would say over 70% of our portfolio is Roth money.
That's incredible.
And it's not like me to take blind advice, but I'm so grateful looking back that this young person shared with us that was his best career investment, future development advice. Yeah. So we just got lucky. But talk about kind of the unsexy investing, right? It was just this commitment to consistent, disciplined. We set it and forget it. So all of those years through the Marine Corps and now the years through the airlines, we just inched it up a little by little over the years, and back down a few years too. Yeah. And it's turned into I'm seeing the value of it now, and I'm so grateful. It's going to be an incredible asset when retirement comes around.
Yeah. Markets were raging in the late 90s. That was when I started investing, and I got out of school. And by the time I had money to invest as a brand new second lieutenant, it was probably 98, 99. And I remember I was already doing retirement projections, which is really weird. I have no idea why I was doing that. But nonetheless, I remember thinking, my buddies are getting about 50% a year. And I think I'll go with conservative. 25% should be realistic for projections for my retirement. That's what the late 90s were like, just to let you all know.
Charlie, you thought you'd be retired by now if you were, all right.
Well, my projections show that I'd be retired by 40 now. I did kind of retire at 40. I left the air. When did I leave the airlines? I can't remember when I left military. I've quit so many jobs, Lisa. I left military. I've quit the airlines. But anyway.
Yeah, for me, this was the same time period, early mid 90s, when when you're graduating college, you were negotiating for stock options, right? Because the tech stocks and the market was going crazy. And so all these young people negotiated for stock options with their employment packages. I didn't find myself in that kind of a career. So thank goodness I invested in Roth, but I probably am better off. So that dried up pretty quickly, right? Otherwise, they all would have been gazillionaires by now as well. The game has changed. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So that's my habit/strategy that I think is super impactful. Get to know the different techniques at your airline to get Roth, either in your 401k. You may still be eligible for direct contributions to the Roth. Maybe you're not. There's a backdoor Roth, lots of tax implications. There's the mega backdoor Roth that some airlines have. United, Delta, American, FedEx, UPS have that opportunity. It applies to a small slice, usually of mid to upper level FOs. And I say that because of just usually what salary they're making, how much they're able to save. Usually by the time you're a higher income captain, you're hitting IRS limits, and that's going to also limit you on that mega backdoor Roth. But again, message us if you have any questions. We can help with that.
I would add that evaluating if Roth is the right tool in your portfolio can be beyond the numbers as well. And it would be something it's worth considering. Sometimes there's an emotional component, and sometimes the numbers don't necessarily make sense tax wise, but the emotional component of being reassured that money is tax free the minute I step into my retirement, there can be immeasurable value in that element of it too. So there's a lot of different facets to consider beyond tax implications.
That's a great point. You're removing a huge chunk of uncertainty in your financial life. So that's awesome. But Nolan, what do you got? Anything on the habit strategies that resonate with you?
Yeah, I wanted to tackle number one because, not only does everyone, no matter what stage of career you're in, have savings priorities, but I think when we've been meeting with our younger FOs, this has been one that is just questioned all the time, because I think when you're earlier on in your career, you're getting established, life changes, life events. I'm going through this as well. My wife and I, it's like there's so many different life events that can happen and a lot of uncertainty in the future. And so it's kind of hard to know where to save, where to put your money. I wrote down a few things that we often hear. It's like, should I buy a home? Should I rent? Like, if we're only going to be living in a city for 3 years, what should we do? Is this going to be worth it? Obviously buying a vehicle, paying off loans. That's a big one. Should I pay off my loans? Do I invest? Like, do I do both at the same time? And then some people wanting to start a family or buying a rental property. There's all types of things that people are going through that just make it really hard to know, what do you want? What should you do first? Should I do them at the same time? Obviously it's very dependent upon the situation. So kind of hard to know exactly what that order should be, but nonetheless, I would just say I relate to that, maybe just the savings priorities. Charlie, Lisa, any advice for people going through that? It's kind of hard. Lisa, you mentioned, I love how you're saying that, all we could do was put $5 into the savings. I think or $5 a month. I think that's really important too, is like, sometimes I feel I have to be doing this certain amount and I have to do it really well, but it's like, you can, even if you're just doing it, I think it's just like showing up, that's kind of the building a muscle, and you're just doing that over years that will pay off exponentially. I believe, and I hope. I still got a long way to go, but you all give me hope, and all the clients we meet with as well, who say, I feel like our successful clients are the ones who they reach this certain level of spending or habits, and it just stayed there. They kept making more money, and their spending habits just, it went up a little bit, but for the most part, they allowed that cushion, that extra income to become savings, because there's such a difference between a 50 to 60-year-old pilot who the whole focus is just, I'm going to be retiring soon. We're throwing money in the brokerage. We're maxing out retirement accounts. And it's so different for a young FO when you might be maxing out retirement, but that extra money, you have a lot of other life events that are going on.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it is fascinating to see. And what goes hand in hand with this, all the way you talked about, Nolan, is, savings priorities. What do you want to do? The trade-offs, the spending plan is really one and the same, because when I determine what is it we really want, as a family, or if I'm a single person, what do I really want in the next 3, 5, 10 years? Well, you don't have to budget. Lisa, sorry I said that. Lisa's a master budgeter. But what I think you have to do is you have to plan out those things that you do want, that are important to you, that are going to define, a quality life for you, and then bring those expenses into the present. In other words, if you're going to go on a cruise every year, well, then start paying for it every month instead of going on the cruise and putting it on a credit card. That alone, I think, is going to help you to get to what Nolan just talked about, where you're a 50, 55-year-old airline pilot and you're like, hey, we save a ton of money simply because we just don't spend as much as we make. And it's like an automatic savings mechanism, because they learned to, quite frankly, save up for the thing that they really wanted and then purchasing it, not just throwing down the credit card. And I know that's really remedial kind of financial, advice or a discussion, but it is so critical to the behaviors to be able to build that habit pattern. And that's where I've seen people be amazingly successful with their, finances later in life as well.
I just have to jump to my defense for a minute.
Yeah.
No, I would argue that I am not a budgeter. I'm really not. But we do have a spending plan, and we treat our spending plan like we treat our investments, where I just reset the clock in January looking toward Christmas next year. And I set aside, just in software, not physically moving the money, but I can earmark every month a little bit of money to reach my goal at Christmas. So come November 1, I have this pot of earmarked money and I can spend with abandon. It's so freeing. But so I would say, I agree with everything Charlie says. I think 90% of the battle, particularly when you're a young person, is to just start wrapping your hands around how your money is going out the door, and then take some time to really think about, is this what I want? We were talking with Jon earlier about, and I have a spouse that eats out a lot as well, and kind of having that be a priority. And it's amazing how quickly money can go out the door on food, and you don't necessarily realize it. So if you just take 1 month and kind of wrap your hands around it and say, okay, am I really getting $3,000 worth of value and enjoyment out of this? And maybe you're not, and that you're probably not. And that goes into what you were saying, Nolan, is you look at that and you look at you look at your debts and you look at your desires, and how do we balance these? And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be, we'll eat a little bit less, we'll invest a little bit less than maybe we want to, but we'll do something. You just strike a balance between all of it. But budgeting is a horrible word. I'm just going to say that. Nobody needs to budget. Nobody needs to budget. You just need to be aware of your spending and just be intentional about your money.
That's a truth.
And it's amazing the reward that can bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. What really helped me was getting an app on my phone and linking my credit cards to it. And then it just tracked all my transactions. So I could really see, hey, this is how much money is actually going out. And I mean, it categorized everything for me. So I didn't have to do very much, which is great, because I don't want to do a really detailed budget. So it tracked everything, and I could see, oh, hey, I'm spending, $800 or something on food, and I'm only home 14 days a month. Like that's a lot of money, but like I just never knew I was actually, losing that much money on eating out just because I didn't want to cook.
Yeah. And there's a chance, Jon, that you might go, you know what? That is valuable to me, and I want to do that. And I think that's okay. Yeah. And I think one of the spending, not budgeting, but spending techniques, spending planning techniques is be a miser on things that don't bring you any value. You know what I mean? That's the thing to me, like eating out does bring value because it's a chance for us as a family. Nobody has to cook. Nobody has to clean. We get to not gripe at each other about who's doing the dishes or sleeping on the floor. So that's really valuable to us. And so, but there are a lot of things that we cut out, with abandonment because it just doesn't bring any value. We don't eat out at nice places right now because we have little kids and they don't care, whether they're eating a Happy Meal or a steak so we don't eat out at really super nice places, but nonetheless, it is valuable. So I think that's the key, is determining what brings you value, spend money on it like crazy, and then cut out everything else that doesn't. You know what I mean? I think that's something that it resonates as well.
I think that's particularly difficult too when you're young in your career and you're young in your life's journey, because you may not have figured that out yet either. So this is trial and error, right? So give yourself some grace too if you found that you've spent money on something where you look back and we're like, ooh, maybe that wasn't the best choice, right? But you had a good time and you learned something from it. So give yourself some grace.
All right. Sounds good. So far, a little quick recap. I don't know if we've gotten to 10 yet, but we've got, as far as the mindset, life happens, be ready. You don't make that much. You make a lot. You don't make that much. You don't make FlexJet, NetJets kind of money, right, John? Understand.
Money.
Yeah, there you go. But understand your unique financial behaviors, where they came from. We didn't specifically say that, but we've been talking about it. There's a lot of behavioral science here, psychology, that we behave a certain way, whether we're a spender or a saver. But nonetheless, don't try to get rich quick. Another one on the habits and strategies, Roth. Take a really hard look at this. Again, we can't, speak to every person on this call. We don't know specific circumstances, but take a really hard look at Roth and determine whether it's right for you and how to do that. Establish savings priorities, establish a spending plan, like we talked about, not a budget, spending plan, not a budget. And then a couple others as we wind down and kind of run out of time here. I'll just kind of go off in order. And one of the things we see people do every once in a while is they put here, don't reduce your net worth to save taxes. Don't buy a crappy rental real estate property that costs you a lot of money simply to save taxes. That's a wealth killer. You can buy really good rental properties, really good quality properties that increase your net worth. But oftentimes, if the main goal is to reduce taxes, you might be getting yourself in a situation where it doesn't pay off in the long run, because taxes become really, really painful as your income goes up. You're already feeling that probably. Prepare for financial legacy with young kids. We talked about that. The perspective, how to do that takes a lot of thought, intentionality, and discipline to allow your children to inherit money responsibly. Dave Ramsey says it best: if you don't prepare your kids, that money will destroy them if they don't have the character to handle that. Finally, I'd like to go around the room here really quickly as our last bullet point. I think you got to read some books. Knowing you talked about it, like there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube, all kinds of stuff on Twitter or X or whatever we call it. But if you don't have a solid financial foundation, you're not going to be able to discern what information is good for you, what information is garbage, who's trying to sell me something. So you have to invest some time and read a book. And I know that sounds really old school, but read a book. Anyway, so Nolan, start us off. Any recommendations?
Yeah, well, I love how you mentioned the good book. First thing, the Bible. The Bible in here, I'm doing that as well. But in terms of finance, Psychology of Money, Charlie mentioned it earlier. It's by Morgan Housel. He has a real knack, I think, for just simplifying these financial matters, which I definitely need. I appreciate. And he also, as you can tell by the title, just sometimes these decisions are bigger than just the money. Maybe buying. I think of the buying versus renting decision for a house. A house is an investment, and it can be, but there's also a lot of costs that come along with it. Most of the time, it's probably going to cost more than what you think, but that's okay if you're able to afford it. You're not spending more than you make, and you find value out of that, and you and your family, then I think that's great. And so he kind of goes into that psychological component as well. And he's really, any of his books though are a great read, but Psychology of Money would be my recommendation.
Yeah. John, what do you got?
Atomic Habits. I read it back in college, but making or establishing really good habits is crucial. Actually being able to make it into a habit instead of just making it to quitter's day and quitting. You don't want to do that. So yeah, it's a good book for learning how to get some good habits going.
Okay.
And in a sneaky way, Atomic Habits has you do a vision board.
Yes.
That's right. It's all about, you're not striving to be like a gym rat. You are a gym rat, right?
Yes.
You have, you do a vision board.
The identity. Yeah. It's your identity.
You want to be,
it.
where you want to be. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Lisa, because Jon stole mine, well, I knew Nolan was going to pick Psychology of Money. I didn't know Jon was going to pick Atomic Habits. So that was going to be mine. So since I'm scrambling here to find my other favorite book, you go ahead.
I was going to pick Psychology of Money too. Yeah. And you may have seen me, I was trying to reach up in the cabinet above my desk to grab it. A book that I would recommend, even if you don't have children yet, it's The Opposite of Spoiled. I don't know how to pronounce the author's last name, Ron Lieber. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't have children, it's fantastic about perspective. And it says raising kids who are grounded, generous, and smart about money. And to simply read it and apply that perspective to yourself, even as a young person, I found that book, and now as a parent, I've found that book really informative.
Oh, that's good. I like it. All right. I'm going to cheat and go with two because I can't decide. And one of them is The Infinite Game with Simon Sinek. And it just talks about, there's no necessarily finish line, like, oh, I've arrived. You know what I mean? Whether that be life or money or your work. It is an infinite game. You're always trying to just get better, grow. So I love that idea because it allows me to just think about moments a little bit more too. You know what I mean? It's like we're trying to run a good business, trying to help people. There's no like finish line per se. So that perspective is really good. The other one is called Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. And I think that is a fascinating book because in a way we all have every once in a while this mentality of scarcity. One of our core values at Leading Edge is to have an attitude of abundance. And sometimes that attitude of abundance costs you something. And so those two concepts go hand in hand. So I love that book. And I think it always has financial implications and life implications as well. So, all right. Any parting shots, any closing remarks? All right. I'll take that as a no. So this has been awesome. Thank you all for joining us and providing that perspective. Nolan and Jon from 220-something really smart dudes. So we appreciate what you all have shared. Lisa always is same with you. Thanks for being on, even though you kind of didn't want to a little bit. I'm going to out you. She said, do I have to be here? And but anyway,
I'm grateful to have been a part of it.
That's right. We're glad you're here. Very valuable. And so we appreciate our audience, our pilot tribe, and we are grateful to be able to speak to you and add value. Please let us know if there's any questions you have, anything you'd like us to cover. You can reach our office at info@leadingedgeplanning.com. You can reach me directly, Charlie, CHARLIE, at leadingedgeplanning.com. Same for Nolan. Same for Jon, Jon, and same for Lisa at leadingedgeplanning.com if you want to reach out and make her answer some tough questions for you. So,
I got you. I'm here for you.
Thanks again. Happy New Year. And we're looking forward to a great, prosperous 2025.
Thank you for listening to the Pilot Money Guys podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen. We are grateful for your reviews because they encourage others to listen in. Visit leadingedgeplanning.com to learn more and subscribe to our newsletter. Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC, LEFP, is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where LEFP and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.